This conference will now be recorded. This conference is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry about that, a flick of the wrist.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Okay, council, we'll get going. If I can get a mover and a seconder to open up our meeting, please. Belinda and John. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that we do call this regular meeting of council to order on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And moving right along, we have added Indigenous land acknowledgement to our procedures. And I'm going to ask Councillor Peroff as the Deputy Mayor to read that now.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure. The council, I want to tell you that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the land that we gather here today is a Treaty 9, 1905 to 1906 territory, the traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples. As we work towards reconciliation, may we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Peroff. And we'll continue on to item number 3, the review and any changes of the agenda, and item number 4, the approval of the agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Stefanik and Belinda, Councillor Kistemaker. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And moving on to item number 5 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Declaration of conflict of interest, and council, you can do that now at any time throughout the meeting that such a situation would arise. There being none now, we'll continue on. The first adoption of the minutes, 6.1 for our regular meeting of Wednesday, September 29th. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by John, second by Belinda. Moved by John Peroff, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on Wednesday, September 29th, 2021, as distributed. Are there any comments on the minutes? I don't see any. I put those to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, so we have a special presentation tonight. Ontario Clean Water Agency is with us. Johanna Kirkbride and Patrick Couture are here, and I'd like to welcome them now. And they're going to be talking to us about cost plus versus fixed price contract, Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Project. And I welcome you, and you can take the floor, Johanna.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, Council and Administration. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My colleague, Patrick Couture, is joining as well. Many of you are familiar with Patrick. He was an operator in Hornpain for a long time, and he recently has taken on a management role with OCWA. So he'll be managing the Hornpain water and wastewater operations. It'll be a daily contact for Public Works and Administration, and we'll get to meet and bring information to Council at your direction. So we're here this evening. Oh, sorry, I don't know, Patrick, if you wanted to say hi or say a few words.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to see you all. And as always, we'll let Johanna continue, and I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. So we're here this evening to talk about two different topics and to bring you some information. It's not for consideration or decision this evening, but to sort of bring about a broader discussion. The first topic that I wanted to present to you on is the contract type that we have that sort of outlines the partnership between OCWA and the Township of Hornepayne. OCWA offers two different types of contracts when we partner to operate your water and wastewater facilities. We have cost plus contracts and fixed price contracts. And that's really a term used to direct how the financials work within the contract. The current structure that we have under our agreement and have always had in Hornepayne is a cost plus contract. And a cost plus contract operates or is structured such that we provide a cost estimate to you every year before budget, before the start of the new fiscal year, that details the costs in categories, 4 or 5 common categories for the upcoming year to operate your facilities. So things like chemicals, electricity, salaries and benefits for the operations staff. And then we charge a management fee on top of that for the overall management of your facilities. And that covers costs for managers, support services like compliance, technicians, specialty trades, our corporate office, legal, IT, all of the functions that you would have in a large organization, an operating authority. And so we provide a cost estimate at the beginning of the year. And then, as you know, we provide quarterly financial updates to you to let you know, gauge how we're measuring up against the estimate. So the beginning of the year is like the budget, and then we report quarterly on where we're at with the actuals compared to the budget. In a cost plus contract, you're responsible for anything over. So if the actuals go over the budget amount, the Township of Hornepayne is responsible for paying the difference. And if they come under, the township receives a credit. So you've paid, it's like paying in advance, and then it gets reconciled at the end of the year. And we manage that very tightly, and, you know, and communicate anything that we sort of forecast that would bring it over or bring it under, because that can give you some more room to decisions on additional spending you want to do with your water and wastewater facility. You might want your areas. That type of contract type is typically used when we're brand new to our partnership. So we might be unfamiliar with the costs that it takes to operate your plant, and you may be unfamiliar. If you're operating it yourself, sometimes it's hard to do the accounting and differentiate between salaries, for example, where public works staff would be doing multiple duties. So a cost plus contract is usually done up for the initial start of the partnership until you can determine the true cost to operate the facility. And then you'd add in the necessary inflation that would happen throughout, you know, the normal course of year over year. There's most of our contracts in OCWA that we operate, and specifically in the north, are fixed price contracts. And what a fixed price contract is, OCWA does an estimate and submits a price to you that includes everything, including the management fee, and that's the price of the contract for the length of the agreement. We can add upset limits onto things. So where you might want to have a lot of maintenance within the scope, we know, say, for example, we know that it costs about $30,000 a year or $50,000 a year to do maintenance and specific things. But some years it could be more than others. We can structure in a term, it's called upset limit. So that allows for a similar type thing with a cost plus contract, where if we go over, we've communicated that, and then the township's responsible for paying that. But if we come under that year, then you do get the credit back. So you're not paying for services that you're not utilizing that year, and you can use that money to fund other projects or in other areas of your budget that you need. Some of the benefits, there's benefits to both, but the biggest benefit to a fixed price contract is, you know, you have stability of pricing for budgeting, for rates when you're doing rate setting. and you can control the things that tend to fluctuate. The costs typically don't fluctuate much other than for the majority of the categories. Salaries and benefits, you know how much staff we have and what it takes to operate the plant. Chemicals, unless you're introducing a new chemical, it's standard with flows, or if you have an increase in population. But if there's nothing that's kind of outside of the norm, the costs are pretty stable. And so it's a little bit easier to forecast for future growth. So, and again, the benefits of the cost plus contract are you get the quarterly updates. So you can see where you're tracking against financials, and you have the ability to, if you do change, grow, want to add on a new component, a new chemical is required, you have the ability within the current agreement to just do that and just manage it. Just kind of ebbs and flows. So yeah, we wanted to, you know, to be efficient. The reconciliation process on the cost plus agreement that we have, the structure of that can be timely, can take some time. You may not see the credit for the previous fiscal year for a good 6 months well into the new year. And the reasons for that are OCWA is audited by a provincial auditor every year, and we can't release any final, even though we have the numbers and we presented them in draft, we can't release that final reconciliation until the audit is complete, and that can be timely. So, and the last year we implemented a new financial system, and I don't know if anybody's been through that recently, but it can be painful. There were some bugs with it, and that therefore it was a little bit delayed. And you know, we really pride ourselves on having good customer service. It's important to us, so we want to be able to provide timely communication to you, and thought it might be time to talk about the different structure types and leave that with you. If you do have questions, I'm happy to answer. If you want me to come back later on, or you want to go in a different direction, or you want more detailed information, I'm also happy to present that to you. Are there any questions at all from anyone?
Well, thank you for your presentation on this first part. So council, do you have any questions for the office staff that's present? Doesn't look like you're getting any questions here. Oh, John, do you have a question? Go ahead, Councilor.
So my understanding is it's just more of an accounting change than it is an actual change in the budget or in a fee structure, right?
Yeah. So it's just a different way of reporting and knowing your numbers. So fixed price, you would know your numbers over the length of our contract for budgeting purposes, for rate setting purposes, and just for managing your overall contractual obligations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, we have another question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, through Mary, thank you. Good presentation, Johanna. Basically, two systems is very similar. When an over budget occurs, the municipality picks it up. In simple terms, when there is a under budget, the municipality gets credit. So it's basically, in that respect, there's no change whatsoever, correct?
That's with your current existing cost plus agreement, yes. With
right,
the fixed,
thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, with the fixed price agreement, then we wouldn't do that. We would on the categories that we set an upset limit if you wanted to, and that would be a joint, we both want that. We can set an upset limit. We don't have to, but we can. The remainder of the fixed price contract, the price that we submit is the price, that's it. If we go over budget, or if the costs go over budget, that's ours to manage. We have to deal with that as any contractor or organization would. And if it goes under, then if we come under, then the efficiencies would stay with OCWA. Yeah,
my fear regarding that is if the numbers come in overestimated on a high level, and the council does not have the authority to approve it, it comes across our table, and just say in an example item, actual cost is $7,000, and you come in saying, well, you know what, that item will cost $10,000. Well, it's being overestimated for this. Just a simple example, $10,000. Well, your corporation or your agency doesn't have a chance to lose anything on it because of the fact you came in high. So my concern would be that the numbers, when they come in, they're tight numbers, they're actual numbers that are broadcasted to the municipal account. So as fairly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, they would be, and I think we have the ability to do that by the sheer length of our partnership. We know we have a really long history of financial records, and so we can predict that. And we also know that the types of events that could lead to an overage or it coming under. So for example, you know, if there's a plant upset, we're all talking about that. So we always make sure that you're well prepared to know that, you know, we're seeing, anticipating some cost overruns because of this event, so that you can plan adequately for it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Go ahead, Gil.
Thanks. Just a question about the, I just want to clarify, we wouldn't be getting the quarterly reporting then of actual versus budget throughout the year. It would just be a year end. We would get a year end, I guess, I don't know if reconciliation is the right word, but report.
Yeah, so you wouldn't get, under the fixed price contract, you don't get a year end report. Your price is just the price that we submit. So that's all from your budgeting purposes. That's the only number that you need to know, is that total amount that you're going to pay for water and wastewater operations. And then if we have the upset limit, which is an optional item, that we would reconcile at the end of the year. And it would come very quickly because we can do that locally. You know, say for example, we use the $50,000 for maintenance, and it comes in, the actuals come in. We usually have actual year-end numbers by the 3rd week of January for the following. If they came in at $45,000, we could do a reconciliation and issue a credit note for $5,000 very quickly. You wouldn't have to wait the full 6 months. So if you're still in your year-end financial process, you have the ability to attach it to that year. Yeah.
So I guess maybe my question should be then, do we get to see as a township what the actual expenses were on OCWA's side during the year?
No, but it's not reported. No.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Good question, Gail. I do have one comment. I know that it's a little bit off of what the fixed cost and the cost plus, but a few years ago, OCWA was looking at possibly doing some lending, and my understanding is that the province doesn't want you going in that direction. Is that correct?
No, so what they've decided is that we've had a change in anything that any government organization does has to get the approval of, in our case, the Ministry of Environment and Treasury Board. There's been some they're reviewing the policy right now on how lending works provincially because of Infrastructure Ontario. What's their role? And then how does OCWA fit into that in terms of lending for infrastructure upgrades? We've always done it in our entire length of our corporation. Since 1993, we've had the ability to lend money in that sense under a certain capped amount for infrastructure projects. So there is a delay right now. We don't have the approval to sign agreements to do it. It's just because it's sitting with Treasury Board and the MECP to review the policy and how that looks. We are anticipating that may take another 8 weeks or so, is the latest update that I got. So from a client service perspective, you know, we communicated it out to you and to all of our partners that they may want to look at other sources of funding so that it doesn't delay infrastructure projects if they're waiting for that funding, before they can start shovel in the ground and shovel ready, stuff like that. Yeah, so more info to come. I mean, I'm hopeful that I think it's a really good feature to have. It's important. It's part of our mandate that we support infrastructure in Ontario, specifically water and wastewater infrastructure. So I'm hopeful that they'll work through the policy and then get to the approvals section sometime this year.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
No problem.
That was all the questions I had. Was there any further questions from council? No, not seeing any, so we can move on if you like, Johanna.
Sure, sounds good. So the second item that I wanted to bring you some information on is a new approach that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks is taking with respect to environmental compliance approvals. ECAs, as the acronym we like to call them, are really just like a permit. They're like a license to operate either the facility or the piece of equipment that you have. You're required to have that before you can operate. Sometimes you'll add in new equipment or build a new facility, and you have to ensure that you have environmental compliance approval prior to beginning the service or starting up the equipment. So it can be it's a bit of a process. And over the years, a number of ECAs have been issued as components to your wastewater system have been added on. You may be familiar with an old term. They used to call them certificate of approvals, and they had them for water and wastewater. Well, now on the water side, they have drinking water works permit that encompasses everything. And on the wastewater side, they have environmental compliance approvals. So in an effort to consolidate, some municipalities have multiple ECAs for operating wastewater and stormwater systems and equipment. So it can be confusing. It's a lot of documentation. And if you're upgrading or replacing any equipment, it's a lot to kind of go through. So the ministry is taking a long-term and a short-term approach to consolidating the wastewater ECAs, stormwater, and the waste management. And the waste management ECA side doesn't include your wastewater facility. It's nothing that's on the wastewater facility property. So it's everything underground, linear assets. And that's why they're calling it the Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Approach is one of the terms. So this evening, I wanted to bring you some information because it's a new approach the ministry is taking. They've issued letters out to municipalities, townships on different intervals. So with a deadline to submit a number of documents to create 2 ECAs for the wastewater side for your community. So there's a lot of information floating out there. And as your partner in water and wastewater, it's not our approach, but we're getting information. We sit on a working group with the MECP for this specific section. So we will communicate out via email through Gail to you about what's happening, what information we're receiving, as well as come to council and bring you that information. So you have the information that I've sent through already, but in the simplest form, I guess, what the ministry is looking at is a pretty strict timeline for the first applications to be submitted. You have either a January, February, or March application deadline of 2022. And what's required is that all owners, municipalities submit a checklist of items for what they can find in 2 separate applications. Stormwater, if you have stormwater assets, and then on the wastewater side, municipal sewage side. So collection systems, really, anything that's not the plant. So the requirement is that you pull together any existing ECAs that you currently have. And there is an application and a guide. It's quite lengthy, so I thought it might be helpful to kind of break it down a little bit. Sorry, I'm just looking for a description of the existing ECAs, they want those submitted with the application, your asset management plan, any sort of list of sanitary and stormwater assets that you have. So sometimes you'll have those in a program like software. OCWA has Maximo. So if we do have any of your stormwater and sanitary info in there, which we typically don't, we can extract it into like an Excel table and give that to you. So it's like an asset list, maps of your system, any of your as-built drawings, and then any GIS information that you have. Now, what I am hearing is that from the ministry, because they have this pretty strict deadline, January, February, or March, I believe yours is March, what they're asking for the short approach is submit what you have. So if you don't have GIS data or as-built, just submit everything that you can find, kind of gather it up and submit it through, and they'll work from there. There is a fee for it, of course, with any application that goes in, and I think it's really based on the level of effort required on their end to review what you have. So as we, as this comes out, one thing I should mention, the ministry will be conducting webinars, information sessions for information for you and for the Public Works and Administration to answer any questions that you might have and kind of guide you in how to fill out that application. So initially, I think when we talked, I sort of recommended that you have an engineer look at this stuff. I don't know if that's required. At this point, as I read through this, it really looks to me like it's a gathering of information, whatever you have available to you to submit through. Is there any questions that you might have about it?
I'll open the floor to council. Do you have any questions on the presentation? So currently, a few things that I heard you say, Johanna, was that in your database at OCWA, you really don't have these items within your database, that they would be at the township level.
Yeah. So if they've been managed by the Public Works Department, so there's stormwater and collection information, then they might have the information. If it's not something that, so our database Maximo is primarily used to do maintenance. So if there's no maintenance that's required on, underground assets besides maybe annual cammering, or they might do different surveying of them. But if it isn't listed in our system, then we would have to go through documents and records, or the Public Works Department would have to go through what they have for sanitary and stormwater. As part of this approach, I think, as the township sits down and looks at, and starts collecting the information, certainly a phone call with OCWA would be, I think, helpful to find out, okay, what do you guys, or a meeting, what do you guys have from this area? Do you have any information on it? Sometimes too, there'll be drawings or information at the plant for it. It just depends on where it's housed.
And how far in advance did we know that this was coming? Like if it's that, like I'm looking at the timeline sheet, how far did we know out beyond this summer that this was coming?
We didn't. So I think the first real clue that we got that this was coming out, it's been talked about for years that they needed to do something with ECAs, but nothing concrete. And then the letters came out, I believe, in the fall, September, maybe late August. Yeah. So that was the first indication. So, we have heard of some townships asking for extensions. There is a mechanism to do that. There is contact provided where you can go through that process. I think, a good first step is to see what is available, what you do have for information, and kind of collect it and put it together. And if it appears that a lot of the information is going to take some time. You know, you might have to go out and locate some of the assets that are buried, and you know, they're there, they serve a function, but we may not have data on them that we can submit for. So good idea is to gather that, see what you have and make an assessment. Can you submit what you have as of now? Does that satisfy the ministry or the application's requirements? And then go from there. I think the longer term approach is, you know, as people are responding and submitting applications, depending on the depth of information that townships and municipalities have, will really dictate how that approach is done moving forward. If we think back to when they first came out with the DWQMS, which is Drinking Water Quality Management System on the water side, you know, they have the initial approach and they submit a request out for information, and it takes many years to evolve into the full system that it is, which is managing those requirements under regulation. So it's a good question, because this could be the first step of many, and we just don't know at this point. As soon as we do, I mean, OCWA strives to really bring information to you guys. That's why we have people that sit on the working group. We have someone from the north sitting on it as well. So we can also float information back up to them. So if there is feedback from council, from administration that you'd like to go to them, we can certainly bring that up.
Well, my concern is where my mind is going just after you presenting so initially they wanted to consolidate the ECAs because there was too many out there and they just want to streamline the process. But in the working that out, my concern is everyone's going to be looking at our data with holes in it. If there is, I don't know. And then it could, like, literally they could just say that you have to have these certain requirements mandated after within this new system. So it could be quite costly for a municipality like ours, that where we're just getting everything, like all our ducks in a row, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and the fees that they're charging us to do this, so we're paying for their work.
Yeah, so there's an application fee with all of the ECAs. There is an application fee, and I think one of the reasons behind them wanting this consolidated one is that there's less fees, there's less paperwork. That's the whole the premise behind it. So, for example, when this is all said completed, you'll have one ECA for stormwater and one ECA for all of your wastewater collection components. And then if you add on, or you have some growth within your community, you know, you extend out, build new underground collection assets, you have one ECA. You're not paying new fees for multiple. You have the one set. And then to speak to your point, in terms of managing your community's ability to have all of these different requirements and regulations, as we know there are a lot in Ontario, I can understand the concern with where is this going? Like, where are we going to be? And it's hard to manage. How do you manage in the community within the unknown, right? So you're making decisions now, but if the ministry is thinking of doing something, an approach that could impact that, it'd be nice to know that now. Certainly, I mean, I think it's a good question, and it's worth discussing, and we'll discuss it too, you know, as a internal group, but maybe that's something that we float through back up to the working group to say, what is the long-term plan? Can that be communicated out to municipalities so that they can appropriately plan for any decisions they're making now?
Yeah, I think it needs to be floated, because I'm thinking back to when we put our water. So let's look at water and the increase that happened because of the Walkerton issue, and then all the legislations that changed, and then where we are today. And now, and we know in our community, because we did a study, a survey about the distrust that our residents have with our water. And we have good water. And trying to build that back up. So that's my concern is, and we're spending $1 million now on sanitary equipment at the end portion, right? And if we're not doing the collection to their, like, I just don't want to get into a place where now we're paying through top dollar for things because we're moving along a process as it's being put in place. And that's exactly what happened with our water. Like with the water plant and how we did our water plant, in hindsight's 2020 and things could have been done better. But when you're sitting here like today, not knowing where it's going, like what their actual, like I understand to streamline and to save money and to make it easier, but in the end, is it going to, do you see it costing us more money? Like, because they could say that sanitary, like, I don't know where sanitary collection systems are going into the future. And they could be saying we need to upgrade everything that's in the ground to something else, to new infrastructure. That could possibly come, correct? Like,
I don't think that's the intent, but I understand what you're saying. So in the communication of this approach, the long-term vision for it has not been communicated, and that creates a lot of uncertainty and questions out there, not only with council and the decision makers, but with the public as well, right? So yeah, it's a very valid question. And I'm going to jot it down and then ask that they bring that up. If the long-term approach can be, or vision for this can be communicated out, like where is this first approach leading to? And what does that mean for municipalities?
right.
Making decisions now on upgrades for wastewater infrastructure. Are they going to have, is it going to impact that? Because if it does, which I might be paraphrasing, but I think that's what you're asking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking about, is preparing so that we're not, first of all, we're not putting in infrastructure that's going to be outdated too quickly now to meet the requirements. And really we need to know where they're going. Like what's that end goal with, I understand streamlining and saving money and saving staff hours and all of that, but where is it going in the end when you have all of these things together? Because now you have all the data in one place. So, and usually they can build off of that, right? So I'm not sure what they're looking for exactly besides just streamlining.
Yeah, for sure. I'll bring it forward and then I will communicate that back, any information that I get.
Okay, thank you, Johanna.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from council on the presentation? Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. Those dates that I see, due dates, am I correct? March 18, 2022, for sewage collection and storm water management system, correct? So that's the dates, due dates, right? The ministry is looking at. I think for our municipality, being here 37 years, it's a bit of unrealistic. I mean, we have infrastructure on the ground. Trust me, there are no plans, there's no blueprints, there's no white prints. A lot of areas are hit and miss. Things were altered, changed. I think that's going to be a little longer than to have the information totally in hand in March. I think it's very unrealistic from my end of understanding what they want and what we have, how quickly we can get the data for those questions that they have. That's my view on this one, Johanna.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Stefanik. I think that's quite common from what I'm hearing from other areas. So there is a mechanism. I believe it's attached to one of the letters. There is a contact that you can request an extension from. So that might be something that the township wants to consider. I think the other just to add a little bit to that, when we're talking about underground assets and we live in the north, so if you do have to do some investigation, it's a little hard to do in March and throughout the winter. to find things. So that may be something that the township wants to approach the ministry with due to our climate. Perhaps an additional time allotment would be beneficial.
Yeah, so one further question. So right now they're just asking for the information that we currently have, right? So they're not asking you to spend any money, get all the documents you currently have and submit it.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so another thing that to the working group, because I'm sure I won't be the only mayor, and I'm sure along with council as well, is being apprehensive about items we're going to be, say, put under a timeline to fix, like depending on what's discovered in all this information gathering, so that there needs to be infrastructure dollars rolling out to help municipalities, especially of our size, there's no way the tax base can afford huge upgrades. Like we're going to talk later this evening about our lending limits and that sort of thing. And, you know, it makes it, I know just for myself living in Hornpain, they would be apprehensive. Like I get apprehensive thinking about, oh my goodness, we can't spend, you know, another $1 million trying to do something. Like we have to be realistic. We need that help. Yeah. So at the working group level, I think that needs to be said to the working group, that we have to look at what implications are we putting on municipalities moving forward, and will there be a funding strategy attached with those implications?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's...
Any other questions? If there are, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, if you do think of something, or throughout, you know, your different discussions, both internally with Public Works as you're going through this process, or at the different working groups or other communities that you're communicating with, if you do have questions or you do want information, I did jot down your question, your query, your worship. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to come back to council. We're happy to meet with Gail and Dwayne and Melissa and provide information that way as well.
Okay, thank you so much for coming, Johanna and Patrick, tonight. It was nice to see you both. As always, thank you so much. You have a great evening.
Have a good evening.
Yes. Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, council, we'll move on with our agenda. And we're at managers' reports. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation, the Township of Hornpain, does hereby acknowledge receipt of the manager's reports provided at the regular meeting of council held on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. And our first report is the CAO Clerk's report. Gail, would you like to speak to your report before I open up to comment or question from council?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to again welcome Jennifer Hill to our team, our senior management team, as acting deputy clerk for the next few months. And she started last Tuesday, a few days ago, 3-4 days ago anyways, midweek last week, I think. Is doing a great job so far, and I'm looking forward to working with her, as we all are. And also just our other new employee that started this week as well at the arena is Troy Leavitt. So just welcome to them both.
Okay, great. Welcome, Jennifer and Troy. That's awesome. Okay, council, I open up the floor for questions or comments to our CAO. Nothing from John. Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
I have no questions. I just have a comment through you, Mayor, to Gail, the CEO. Very solid report. I have no question because it's very thorough and well done. I thank you.
Thank you, Drago. Any other further comments or questions for Gail? I don't see any at this time, Gail. I'm just looking at the second page of your report where you talk about the official plan and zoning and the steps that are going through. And I just had a quick question because I know in other reports we're going to be looking at our community improvement plan. So we're okay to start that next process, even though we haven't got full ratification from the province of the official zoning?
We are, particularly because by the time we actually start working on a document, it's probably going to be close to the time we've gotten that back. And I don't think the, if there's a couple of changes here and there to the official plan, it won't impact the CIP enough to make a difference.
Okay,
it should be fine.
Hats off to yourself and the staff for rolling that out, and like that's just awesome. I didn't expect to see anything about the CIP on this meeting, so I'm excited.
Yep, Stacy's been working away on that RFP, so hopefully we'll get that out in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, okay. And the only other comment I had was page 3 about the vaccination policy. I am glad to see it on your report. I know it's been discussed at our community control group meetings and that it's across the board. And I'm anxious to see the policy just to make sure that our municipality is safe and acting in a safe manner. So I was glad to see that there. And congratulations on the successful hazard day, the waste day too. Okay, any further comments from council? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to the next report, and we have our treasurer report and client service manager. Melissa, do you have any comments or additions to your report before I open it up for questions or comments?
No, I don't. Thanks.
Okay, great. So I open up the floor for questions or comments from council to our client service manager treasurer. I do have a few comments while council is reading over their notes. I really like, Melissa, that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs on page 2 talking about the healthy limit of debt to be about 10 or 15%. So there is some guiding principles out there to guide municipalities. I'm taking that from this document or from your report, and that we can create the document of the debt management policy.
Yeah, we definitely should have a debt management policy in place.
Okay, do you know if the municipality has ever had one?
Not that I'm aware of, Gail.
Not that I'm aware of either.
Okay. Is there any other further questions from council on Melissa's report? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll carry on. Our next report is from the Public Works Manager. Dwayne, do you have any comments or additions to your report before I open it up for questions to council or comment?
No, I do not.
No? Okay, great. So I open up the floor to council for questions or comment to Dwayne on his report. Go ahead, Councillor Paroff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I noticed in your report, you put the addition of Junior Park behind the pavilion is underway. Has there been any thought of putting stairway access on the backside of the pavilion to get to the, easier to get to the park, to the playground?
Not as of yet. We haven't considered that.
Okay, is that something that we could think of maybe?
Can't see why not.
Have a more encompassing use. I guess it would it be something that would be looked at once it's fully developed, all of the articles are put in place that would be there?
I would say yes.
Yeah, and then look at access routes. Thank you, Councillor Perroff, for the comment. Any other further questions? I just have one about the compressor. So the issue is going to be permanently resolved for what was happening?
Yes, the parts are ordered and it should be in shortly, and they'll be replaced as soon as they arrive.
Okay, but is it it's not affecting our ice being ready for November 1st then?
Nope.
We're still on target for that?
We're still on schedule.
Okay, great. So any other further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Dwayne. And we are at our Economic Development Officer's report. The EDO, Stacey Randell, do you have any questions or additions, or sorry, comments or additions to your report before I open it up to floor to questions or comments?
I don't have anything extra. I do really want to give a shout out to the PWD guys. The park came kind of at a surprise, so we did some really quick work and they did a fantastic job rearranging their schedule when there was work shortages. So I just want to give a shout out to them for sure.
Perfect, perfect. Sounds like we got a good team down there, everyone kind of working together, so that's great. Okay, so I'll open it up the floor for questions or comments for our Economic Development Officer. I just have a couple of items just on the pavilion. So because my understanding, I know we've gone back and forth on this a little bit. At one point we were going to do nothing this year, and then we were able to get some of the equipment, and because of COVID there's been some issues. So what are we hoping for to be the completion of this? Like, will that the installation that's taking place now, will that be usable at any time this year, or will it be just blocked off till the spring?
Well, we would hope that it would be usable, but well, it's all dependent. So we have some staff off next week, and we're hoping to level off the ground, and we're waiting for some crushed rock still from Villeneuve, but you'll see some more work on it, not next week, but the following week.
Okay, great.
But on the other hand, there's still 5 pieces that were shorted. So those one is coming next Friday, and the other 4, they're not sure when they're coming. So the installers will be back in the spring for sure, just to finish up the park. So some aspects may be open, but some won't be completed for sure by the end of the year.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update. So the question I have to put out to you is, Stacey, is about the community improvement plan, just preparing council and moving ahead. And you've given us a length, just some good knowledge here in your report, plus the supplementary, I think it was from 2008 was the document for community improvement planning from the ministry. So what else can council do to prepare for the upcoming community improvement plan?
Well, I think getting familiar a little bit with the process and what it is, but there's a few different avenues that we can take with the CIP, different priorities we can focus on. So maybe that would be a good section for council to review. we wouldn't make those decisions till the kickoff meeting after we hire the contractor. We would discuss which are our main priorities, but maybe as you're reading through the document, think about what the priorities are. They municipal? Is it facades? Do we want to, our community improvement area is actually the whole community, right? So we can put in policies, a really far-reaching policy for CIP, and we don't have to implement them all right away. It would still be dependent on our finances. So maybe as you're reading through, just think about priorities or things that you think are important for whether it's municipal focused or business focused or beautification focused or affordable housing, just maybe some of your priorities.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one, just before I come to you, Councillor Stefanik, just one follow-up question to that community improvement plan, Stacey. Are we looking at, is there a length of time that they should, like what's a good length of time for a community improvement plan? Or is it, do we do one for 5 years and then it's a rotating document, like a living document? Or is it a set timeline? Or do we get to choose that? Sorry, that was like multiple of follow-up questions.
So we do get to choose. So we can have project-specific timelines. We can have a far-reaching timeline. Say affordable housing could be a 20-year plan. Say if we're doing facades, maybe we have a 3-year. Some of them can be dependent on finances. And if council, it's a living document. So if council sees that, okay, people are taking up the facade, but it's not working out as to our vision, we could actually take sections out or put them on hold. So it's a living document for sure. I would say we should review it with our official plan. So probably whatever schedule we do with our official plan, we should do the review of the CIP at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the booklet 2008 CIP. I looked at it. I didn't analyze it yet, but I'll be this weekend. When do you want the council as individual members? What's the due date that you wish to have recommendation? I'm looking at short term. To me, short term is 2 to 3 years, and long term is anywhere 3 to 5 years. With my priorities as one member of council, of course. When is the time would you like to have this information in your hands, Stacey, please?
So we don't really have a timeline. If you had it the end of December, January, have your priorities set, we would need them for sure for the kickoff meeting with the contractor. So that would be probably early in January, depending on the Ministry of Housing Affairs. So we have to go to them again. The same, not the same process as the OP, but they're the ministry that's looking after that. So probably January would be our kickoff meeting. So you have a long time to read and analyze.
You will have this by first week of December. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. So in that, just following up with that of having ideas and different things. So if we didn't have, say, the money to introduce, say, the facade, because usually the township would partner a portion within a community improvement plan. So if there are good ideas, we could put them, say, in the 7-year mark of the plan, like inject them at that point so that we have time to find the funding to do that or to gather the funding.
That's correct. So we can put the policies in the CIP, but we don't have to activate all the policies when we adopt the plan.
Okay,
So
I like that.
A lot of them are going to be funding contingent, and we have a small reserve so far. So.
Okay, I love that, activate. So we almost have like a secondary activation plan going along with it. Okay. And my final question is, if we were to have a community foundation in our community, are they able to support the community improvement plan? Like, are they able to fund portions of it? Do you know?
Like a nonprofit?
Yeah, like if we had a nonprofit community foundation within our municipality, would they be able to inject funds into that plan? Like, where can we, I guess the broader question would be, where can we gather funds besides just our tax base or savings or the ministry or the province? Are there other avenues that we could be creative to gather funds for it?
We can. So we could solicit money from businesses or industry. We can look at partnering with community nonprofits as well. So we would set out those guidelines and principles in the document itself.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm just, why I asked that, Stacey, is I know for ourselves as a municipality, we can't do fundraising like 50-50 draws or anything like that, but in an organization can, and then they can categorize those funds back to us. That's a right thought process there? Okay. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Is there any further questions from council? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you so much, Stacey. And that was our manager's reports. And I put the motion to a vote to accept the reports. Those in, oh, sorry, Gail, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure you noticed there was a second report about the airport attestation process. It was just basically for your information. It was under Public Works.
Yes, I have it here in my hand, but I wasn't, that was the report. I didn't know where I was sticking it. Sorry.
Yeah, it just went under Public Works as well. So it was just a process that we don't really have a choice. It's a Transport Canada regulation that changed. So we just wanted to keep you up to date on what was going on there.
Thank you for that, Gail. Is there any questions or comments on the report to Dwayne? And Dwayne, did you want to speak to your report? And I apologize for skipping over it. I had it. I was actually going to ask where I was putting it.
No, I have nothing to add. If there's any questions, I can answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to apologize to council. I've had a bit of a confusing day because my iPad's not working. My digital aspect of the council meeting is not working for me today. So it's been tough. Okay, so do we have any questions or comments? My biggest concern is it going to cost us a lot of money. I was glad that it's not going to affect our flights and our medevac. So that was good. Good news there, just to let the community know that. And well, right out of your report, it says we have confirmed that flights by the M&R Mines, Charters, Hydro One, and medevac flights will not be affected, just for the community's perspective there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions.
I'm not sure. Sorry, Dwayne looks like he might be frozen. I'm not sure, but we're hoping to be able to work that into the project costs. So we'll have to investigate a little bit more there, but that's what the engineers have actually been working with us with this other group. So that's their suggestion that they think we'll be able to do that. So fingers crossed.
Okay, let's hope so.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no further questions or comments for Dwayne, we'll continue on then. Thank you, Dwayne. And I'll put that the acknowledged receipt of the manager's reports to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, so moving on to action items 10.1. Gail, do you want to speak to the three motions?
Sure. So at the last meeting, we discussed applying to the review stream rather than the implementation stream. for this round of intake for the municipal modernization, partly because we do need some studies done to inform our future planning, and also all 3 studies that we're applying for are SDR recommendations. And also, as a bonus, the review stream is fully funded by the ministry, as opposed to being 75% funded for the implementation stream. And currently we've got 6 or 7 items of implementation that we got funding for in intake 2 that we're starting to roll out. So we thought this was a good opportunity, but the guidelines state that each expression of interest needs to have a separate resolution to go with it. So that's why we have the 3 for one for an independent user fee study, one for a facilities condition assessment for the arena, and one for condition assessment for water and wastewater underground infrastructure.
Okay, thank you for that, Gail. So I will, I need a mover and a seconder for the first one that I have is the independent user fee. Drago and John. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town authorize the CAO clerk to submit an expression of interest, EOI, to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing under the Municipal Modernization Program, Intake 3, review stream for the completion of an independent user fee study. Deadline to submit an expression of interest is October 19th, 2021. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And the second one is for the assessment review of our community arena and C&D Paul Curling Club. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda and John. Moved by Belinda Kissmaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation Hornpaint does hereby authorize the CAO clerk to submit an expression of interest, EOI, to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing under the Municipal Modernization Program, Intake 3, review stream for the completion of a facilities assessment review and C&D Paul Curling Club. Deadline to submit an expression of interest is October 19th, 2021. And I put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And the final expression of interest is for the water and wastewater line condition assessment. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpaint does hereby authorize the CAO clerk to submit an expression of interest, EOI, to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing under the Municipal Modernization Program, Intake 3, review stream for the completion of water, wastewater line condition assessment. Deadline to submit an expression of interest is October 19th, 2021. And I put that to a vote, Council. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, so we're moving on to the Ministry of Transportation Connecting Links 10.2. And that's Dwayne. Dwayne, do you want to speak to your report?
I think it's pretty spelled out in the report.
Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik. You have a question?
Yeah,
or comment?
Comment. Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the recommendation by the PW manager, Dwayne, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Any further comments or questions from Council? I have a few, Dwayne. I'm concerned because the engineering report shows from 2020, and in your report it talked to was it 6 to 10 years that the report indicated we had left. Sorry. That there was possibly 6 to 10 years left of good life on the bridge. I'm not sure where I saw that figure.
It's 6 to 10 years for the surface on top. So it's basically the waterproofing on top of the bridge and the surface on top.
The surface on top. 6 to 10 years. And that was almost 2 years ago that that was assessed, right? So if we're at the minimum end of that, it's 4 years. And my concern is if we don't apply for funding to try and show that we're, a couple of things is that if we were successful to get the resurfacing, I understand that we don't have necessarily funds in the bank to do the water, but we could possibly do financing for that or have some solution to that. Because if it is 4 years, my concern is that we're going to be at a deadline space and we're going to try and get money right at the end. And if we haven't shown that we've been trying to fix this all the way, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned we're going to put ourselves at a wall if we don't apply. That was my concern of it. And I do agree with, like, we have many things, multiple things going on. The other question I have is, when do we have to complete the resurfacing? Do we have extra, like sometimes we get funding, like the airport, we have so many years out. So when do we have to complete the resurfacing?
That one I might have to butt to Gail because I'm not sure what the exact timeline for that closes.
Okay, thank you, Gail.
I tried to look that up today and it wasn't immediately clear. It looks to me like it's the end of 2023. But I'll have to confirm that. I'll have to go farther onto their website. It's not clear to me in the guidelines. So it's not next year necessarily, but definitely the year after.
Okay. So I guess the further question then is, if we don't apply for funding and we're not successful and we go with the recommendation of not applying, what's your long-term plan for the resurfacing of that road?
We're gonna have to find more funding to do the infrastructure underneath, because it's to pave and take it back out again. That's what we're gonna end up doing. I can see it already.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. But at the same time, with this, because it's a highway, we're legislative to keep it to a certain standard.
Yeah, minimum maintenance standard, yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Gail.
I was just thinking that we're applying for this condition assessment for the water and wastewater, and hopefully we'll get that. So what I'd like to see is an overall picture is we have some road assessment condition information, as well as the new program, the trial that you're using right now, Dwayne. And if we can combine those priorities with the priorities that we'll get from the condition assessment of the sewer and water lines, and to me it makes sense to make our decision that way of which is the worst of both, and sort of go from there is what I kind of would be thinking for a long-term strategy, if that works for, you know, working through our underground system.
Okay, so, which is a great strategy. That's awesome. So what, can we just apply to get the bridge fixed? Because what's the actual length of life on the bridge itself? Like, is there any upgrades that we can do just to that? Do you know, Dwayne? I guess the new report that's going to come out?
That's part of it, but there are certain little like guardrail stuff like that's got to be replaced, some miniature stuff there, but nothing major on the structure for many years.
Okay. But we're not going to apply for funding for that minimal, like that. We take care of that maintenance ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess, so then further that then, so it's really the resurfacing. And if we had the money for the water to be fixed, would that change the way your recommendation would have been given?
Yeah, I would say so. Yep.
Okay. So it's just, we have to, like, my concern is just speaking to council, not to Dwayne at this moment, is council, my concern is that we have to keep funding coming in rolling, and we know we have to fix our roads. We do have documentation coming, and my concern is that I have no problem not applying, but what does that show? Are we able, like, what does that show the ministry of our long-term planning and the province? And then we think about, we could possibly be into a new government in the next year, the end of next year. And if the lifespan of this road is 4 to 6 years left, or 4 to 8, sorry, from this timeline, we could be into possibly another government after. So it's a long, when you look at the bigger picture of it and us doing our roads, and we have the application in right now for 3rd Street or 3rd Avenue, my apologies, and how we're going to roll that all out. So that was my only take, and I don't, I like the report. I like what you put down on paper, Dwayne, but I'm just thinking as going to the province and doing delegations and going after money to show that we're trying to keep it going. And that was my concern about not applying. So is it a lengthy application to apply?
It's a fair bit of work. However, we have applied before for limited, like we didn't apply for resurfacing of the road last time again because we didn't want to spend that money at the time and weren't doing the underground. But we've applied 2 or 3 times for bridge repairs alone. We could probably take from some of those applications. I'm thinking. And then from the last report, we could update if there's anything that's changed in the last couple of reports.
Okay, or we can just wait for the water assessment reports, figure out what the cost of replacing the water infrastructure under Leslie will be, and then be equipped with those numbers if we were to apply next year. Would that be a plan moving forward?
I'm thinking it would be, because we would then also have the updated, like the bridges. I think the engineer was just up this week actually to inspect again. They have to be done every 2 years, so we'll have that report. Last time I see that it took them a few months to get us the report, but we would definitely have that report as well as the condition report. Well, hopefully, I'm not sure how long that would take to do, but I'm thinking it would be done fairly quickly if we get word that we get the funding fairly quickly for the modernization. So the 2 of them together would certainly hold more, I would say.
Okay. No pun intended.
No pun intended, no.
Okay, I'm game with that. I'm good to stay with the recommendation from Dwayne, and I'm glad we had the discussion. Is there any further comments from council? Okay, you're off easy there, Dwayne. Well, moving on then, we don't have we don't even want to acknowledge receipt of the report or anything for that. There's no resolution?
There's none, no.
Okay, moving on. Okay, 10.3, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, land transfer infrastructure support. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. John and Belinda. Okay, moved by John Perroff, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby support the attached resolutions from the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, FNOM, regarding the Municipal Land Transfer Tax, MLTP, to be renamed Land Tax for Structure Support, LTIS, dated September 23rd, 2021. Be it further resolved that Council directs staff to forward this resolution to the Honourable Peter Bethenbaldi, Provincial Minister of Finance, the leaders of the provincial opposition, the Ontario Big City Mayors, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association of Roma, Ontario Small Urban Municipalities, OSUM, and Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, NOMA, for their support, with a copy of the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, FNOM. Any discussion on the motion? I'm hearing someone in the background with the mic on. If you can turn off your mic, please. Okay, thank you. So I put any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, I do have one just in the reading of, I don't think I've ever seen the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities on a resolution. How do you say their acronym, Gail? Is it OSUM or is it OSUM? OSUM? OSUM, okay. Thank you for that. And I put this to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried and unopposed. Moving on to 10.4. FNOM, the consolidation of agencies to address the opioid mental health and addiction crisis. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago Stefanik and Belinda Kistemaker. Whereas communities across the province are addressing an intensified social crisis and Northern Ontario is no different, and whereas Council recognizes that creating solutions will require a multi-ministry approach, and if there are any lessons to be learned from the global pandemic, what were once cracks in the healthcare foundation are now large gaps forming, particularly around mental health, addictions, and homelessness. And whereas Northern Ontario has significant challenges when it comes to accessing mental health and addiction services for the people in our communities, and whereas over 300 childcare staff who provide services to over 21,000 licensed childcare spaces in over 340 locations across the north see the effects of mental health and addictions every day in the children they care for and the parents they support. And whereas the defined area of Northern Ontario is over 800,000 square kilometers, and whereas annually over 500 social service staff provide financial and employment assistance to over 15,000 families in 37 delivery sites across the north. And whereas over 300 community housing staff provide safe and affordable housing to over 17,000 families in the north. And whereas police officers and paramedics, when responding to emergency 911 calls, are seeing the difficult results of the mental health and addictions crisis in the north. And in some cases, becoming ill themselves while trying to cope with what they are exposed to. And whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain appreciates the efforts of the 30+ agencies that are working to help and support those addicted to opioids, but sees where better collaboration and partnership or perhaps consolidation of some of these agencies would be beneficial in creating more streamlined services that would create more efficient use of combined funds. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain hereby supports the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, FNOM, request to our Northern Ontario health teams in consultation with municipalities, district social services boards, and local stakeholders to pursue a province-wide strategy that supports such collaboration and service consolidation. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Christine Elliott, Minister of Health, Michael Tubalo, Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, the leaders of the provincial oppositions, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, FNOM. Is there any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I think this makes tremendous amount of sense where there's going to be a multi-services approach. We in Northeastern Ontario are suffering very badly, especially the largest center, the opioid crisis for the last 9 to 10 months. Massive amount of deaths. And I mean, these services have to get together and multi-approach from first group to the last group, and have each professional person trying to assist these people, because if they don't do this, we'll just get worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. And I echo your sentiments. I know within our own community that families have been affected because of the opioid crisis and have lost family members. So yes, we do need a holistic approach for sure. So if there's no further comments, I'll put this to the vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, so moving on to 10.5. Gail, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, so since we don't have our user fee study done yet, and that's, as you see, one of the things we're applying for through modernization funds, we haven't revamped our recreation fees other than the fitness facility that we needed to do because we were putting in a new system. But we haven't done the upgraded or reviewed or updated the arena user fees nor the curling club user fees. So, and with keeping in mind that the hockey season is about to start in a couple of weeks, and we're going obviously with the status quo on that bylaw because it hasn't been updated yet. I don't think that it would be prudent to increase curling fees either, partly because nobody's been able to do any fundraising due to COVID. There hasn't been a chance for anybody to really even get out and participate in something fun. So two things, a social aspect and a financial aspect. And I believe that Melissa can provide council with the fees that are currently or were last charged when curling took place a couple of years ago. But that's just my thoughts is hopefully when we get this user fee study done, we will finally have a good document we can base our fees on. And as we discussed this afternoon, Mayor, in our meeting, have that included in the budget process rather than discussing this every year. If we get a good basis for fees, I know I've been here 20 years and we've never found, I say we, but there's never been a good system that seemed to work for recreation user fees. So hopefully this will help us with that. And then we can just move forward with a steady sort of budget item, and perhaps a small increase for consumer price index, cost of living, that sort of thing. So those kind of are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, and I have to say it was a good discussion just when we were doing the agenda meeting. Gail and I had a short discussion just to let council know some of those thoughts. Was my first question is, why is it on their agenda? Did we not cover it in the budget? That was the first, because we're trying to bring items that really should be administrative items off of council budget. And then so that someone, when they're like in this case, Judy Mann, could have a timely answer right away when she submits and wants to know what's happening. And one other further comment on that was talking about possibly having it so that any users, say for the curling club or minor hockey or any organizations that we support in different ways, that those issues would be raised at the budget when we're setting the big picture for the year. So I am looking forward to having that user fee study done. Any other further comments from council? Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I agree with Gail 100% for all the reasons that she mentioned, and no question, no time to fundraise, unable to fundraise, a lack of activities for last almost 2 years. So I agree with the recommendation 100%.
Okay, and there's no resolution for this, Gail, because it's already within our budget.
Yeah, I didn't prepare anything for that. That's correct.
Okay. If there's no further discussion on this item on our agenda, I'll move on. Okay, not seeing any further discussion. 10.6 is World AIDS Day. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council, the Corporation, the Township of Hornpain does hereby agree to support the awareness and education campaign around World AIDS Day, December 1st, 2021, by encouraging and supporting the Porcupine Health Unit's Red Scarf Initiative. Be it further resolved that Council does hereby authorize the Porcupine Health Unit and Hornpain Office to place red scarves around various poles in the community of Hornpain to raise awareness and fight the stigma surrounding HIV and build support for the AIDS community. Any discussion or comment on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank Natalie because I'm part of PHU. I think that's very commendable on her behalf. I'd like to see a letter from the mayor to Natalie and PHU recognizing her effort for a second time around. Thank you.
Yeah, I have no problem doing that. I was wondering though, is it the second time around or the third?
Oh, maybe you're right.
Maybe the third time, yeah.
Maybe I lost a year in the pandemic. Scare.
Got to come out of hibernating now. But the only question that I had was when we're discussing with Natalie, if we could just set a date that they are taken off of the polls too, so that we know the end date of it, and like if it's in March or February, what have you. I'm not sure what the length of the program usually runs. Could we do that, Gail? Yes? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I could throw you, in the larger cities, I noticed that once the date is over, they allow people that are less fortunate to take them for themselves.
Yeah.
The scarves. Yeah. I'm not sure what the policy of PHU is, but I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I believe that's how it works. Yes, thank you, Drago. Okay, if there's no further comments or questions on the motion, I'll put it to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, so moving on to 10.7. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. John and Belinda. Moved by John Paroff, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby authorize the CAO clerk to sign the attached letter of intent for participation in the Northwest Ontario Orthophotography Project, NWOOP, in 2022. Any discussion or comments on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, through the Mayor, I agree with the CAO's options. I would go option number 1, and also the financial consideration. I would go on the minimum funding of $1,000. I think it's a great program from reading the information that was presented by Gail to the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stefanik. The only question that I had or comment, and I leave this to Gail to discuss with the people that are running the project, is if possibly we could open it up to different sites. One site I was thinking was there's old burial grounds and things with outside of our scope of the municipality, and I'm not sure if that's something we want photographs of. So I just leave that with you, Gail, to discuss, and possibly if there's residents that want portions outside of our municipality, that would be covered by the project as well. Councillor Paroff, do you have a question or a comment? Thank you, Gail.
Oh, just a comment. I was going to say, yeah, it's a great project, and it's actually long time in the running that they've actually come out with this. They've been working on it since 2008 for this reiteration of the inventory. So yeah, I think it's a great idea for us to participate in it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for your comments, John. Okay, if there's no further comments from council, I'll put this motion to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, so moving on to 10.8, Canadian Association of Retired Persons Eye Care. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago. And Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Whereas routine eye care is critical in early detection of eye illnesses such as glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, and the health of eyes is critical to the overall health and quality of life. And whereas conditions may be detected with an annual eye exam include diabetes mellitus, and I do apologize ahead of time if I don't get all of these names correct, glaucoma, cataract, retinal disease, amblyopia, lazy eye, visual fields defects, loss of the part of the usual field of vision, corneal disease, strabismus, crossed eyes, recurrent uveitis, and inflammation of the uvea, the middle layer of the eye that consists of the iris, ciliary body, and the choroid, optic pathway disease. And whereas payments from OHIP have only increased 9% over the last 30 years, which has not come close to matching inflation of costs, which include rent, staff, utilities, equipment, taxes, and supplies. And whereas the lack of funding makes it difficult to invest in modern technology, and newer technology means earlier detection of eye disease. And where the provincial government's refusal to formally negotiate with optometrists for more than 30 years has forced the optometrists to absorb approximately $173 million annually to the cost of deliver eye care to Ontarians. Whereas the 2021 Ontario budget did not address OHIP insured eye care, Ontario optometrists took action and voted to withdraw OHIP services starting September 1st, 2021, unless the government agrees to legally binding negotiations to fund these services at least to the cost of the delivery. Whereas this job action will jeopardize good eye care for those who need the care of an optometrist the most, and will have the greatest impact on the most vulnerable groups, children, whose lifetime ability to learn and develop depends on good vision, and to the elderly, who are at the greatest risk for visionary threatening ocular diseases. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Township of Hornpain requests that the provincial government recognize the value that access to quality eye care brings to all Ontarians and act now to protect it. And be it further resolved that the provincial government address OHIP insured eye care immediately and enter into legally binding negotiation with the Ontario optometrists to fund these services at least to the cost of delivery prior to any job action taking place. Be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Christine Elliott, Ontario Minister of Health. We have Christine Elliott again, Michael Mantha, MPP Algoma Manitoulin, and to the Association of Optometrists. I'm just going to void the second Christine Elliott name in there. And if there's any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, there being none, I put this to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, and moving on, we're on to correspondence information only. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago. John. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby acknowledge receipt of the correspondence information only package attached to the agenda of the regular meeting of council held on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. And is there any comments or questions out of the information only from council? Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, through Mayor to Gail. May I have a hard copy of the OPP 2022 annual billing full report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Any further comments or discussion on the information only package? Seeing none, I'll put the motion to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, we're on to 13.1. I'll hand it over to you, Gail, for the COVID-19 community update.
Hey, thank you. I participated in, as I saw in my report, the Albany Sector Emergency Management Meeting, which is a biannual thing, last week. And Tanya Musgrave from the Porcupine Health Unit did a fabulous presentation at that meeting, which I'm just going to read out a few statistics that she passed on. But I had also asked her to, if she would present that at the Community Control Group meeting last week, and I was not able to attend. And thank you, Melissa, for chairing that meeting for me. But she did also present that to the group. So I just thought some of the stats were interesting. So for the Porcupine Health Unit region, since March of 2020, there have been 2,212 cases of COVID-19 documented. 98 of those have been in the Hearst-Hornpain area. 1,188 of those have been a variant of concern. There were 57 outbreaks in total in the region and 31 deaths to date. The vaccination rates for our area as of October 3rd, 86.4% have a first vaccination and 78.4% a second. As we are probably all aware now, we need to hit 90% in each district and in the province overall to reach herd immunity. So we're still working on that, but there has been a little bit of an uptake, I guess, with these new vaccination policies. Some people are reconsidering, so that the numbers are slowly increasing. And then back to the opioid crisis, I found these numbers really startling. And Drago, you sure are probably familiar with them anyway, having been attending the health unit meetings. This information came from the Cochrane District Social Services Administration Board at the same meeting I was talking about. Their stats were in 2018. There were 35 EMS responses to opioid crisis. And in 2020, there were 273 in the Cochrane district, and 2021 so far, 220. So that just speaks volumes to me. That just shows how bad things are in this area. And I know the Timmins area has really, as you said, really suffered. And then opioid-related fatalities in the same area. In 2017, there were 2 reported, and this year, 2020, there were 40, and this year 27 so far, 16 of those in the first quarter of the year. So there's a real problem there. And I know they're working really hard to do a holistic approach. They're competing with a few other larger centers for some funding to have, counseling, homelessness, shelter, food, all of the supports together. So I'm hoping that they get that, because it sounds like it's a real need in that region and in our area as a whole. So those were some of the stats that were shared with us. We're continuing with our biweekly CCG meetings, Community Control Group meetings, and they are so far. I don't think there's been too much action in the schools in this region, although it was reported at the last meeting that I was at that there are some increases in cases in Southern Ontario school boards. So we're hoping that doesn't trickle up our way, but that time will tell, I suppose. With regard to our own work internally here, we're working on a vaccination policy to bring to the November meeting. I've got several samples. I'm going to run it through the health unit as well and get some guidance from them. And we are also working on some procedures for managing vaccine proof for use of the arena and the curling club for this season. So with those, with the arena season for sure opening the beginning of November, those are going to have to come into place very, very soon. The system we have in place for the fitness facility is working well with regard to vaccination proof. So we'll just have to nail down a good procedure that we can rely on for the other. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Gail for the COVID-19 update or community control group? Seeing none, Gail, thank you very much for your report. So we're moving on to 13.2, the Centre of Ontario staff report. Stacey, do you want to speak to your report before I open it up the floor to questions?
I'll just take questions if anyone has any.
Okay, great. Council, do you have any questions for Stacey? Go ahead, Drago.
Yeah, through Mayor, thank you for a good report, Stacey. I would respectfully ask that report be shared now, since also seen it first with all the ad hoc committees on the committee that I'm chairing. I really like to see this project in a higher gear in spring of 2022. Things have fallen in place finally. It'd be a long time coming, and I understand there's many other projects. Once some grants come through, engineer report, cutting the trail through should not be a challenge, because the fact we'll budget for 2022, number one. Number two, if required for extra staffing for that time period, whatever it is, 3 to 4 weeks to break the trail, put it together, I will recommend it to council when time comes budget-wise. So I really like to see this move as soon as the part of the snow disappears in spring 22, and like to see it in full action for for the summer of 2022. That's my thrust on the whole situation. And I thank you again for the report, and please share with my ad hoc committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Any further comments or questions for Stacey on the Centre of Ontario report update? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Stacey, thank you for the report. And there's no resolution to accept the report. There being none, we'll move on. Okay. We're at 13.3, flood risk study. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Whereas in the process of completing the township's new official plan, the existing floodplain study was found to be very outdated and its relevance to modern day land use planning questionable. And whereas council feels it is imperative to update this document to more accurately reflect current conditions and circumstances, and also to take into consideration the effects of climate change. Therefore, be it resolved that the council, the corporation, the township of Hornpain does hereby direct staff to investigate the logistics related to having an updated floodplain study completed, examples of cost, timeline, sources of external funding, etc., and to bring a staff report back to council at a future meeting for consideration. Any questions on the motion or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, and we'll put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Moving on to 13.4. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda. And John. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby authorize the Economic Development Officer to issue a request for proposals for the completion of a community improvement plan for the Township of Hornpain. Any comments or questions on the motion? Being none, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. 13.4, or sorry, 13.5, the bucket and bucket clamp with link. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby authorize Melissa Chenier, Client Service Manager, Treasurer, to transfer funds from the Community Wellbeing Reserve to go towards the purchase of a bucket and bucket clamp with link in the amount of $18,813 plus HST. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, I put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. And moving on to 13.6, Council Committee Updates. And I open the floor for Council. And we'll just go round table. Councillor John Peroff, is there any updates from your end?
No, I really don't have any updates since last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peroff. Councillor Stefanik?
Thank you, Mayor. Real quickly, I just wanted to speak about the opioid crisis. Last PHU meeting, I want to get council up to speed on this. What I stated in our last PHU meeting is until such time that a large center such as Timmins, Sioux, Thunder Bay, North Bay gets a major facility, bricks and mortar, with professional people to assist those people that are in opioid crisis. Everything else will be a band-aid solution. It'll be just a slight dent in the opioid crisis. We need a facility for professional people to assist those people in great need. And it's a difficult situation, but I think that's going to solve some of the problems rather quickly as opposed to offering other services. And I spoke to that PHU, and I will make sure council knows where I stand on that issue. Really important. The number 2 item is demolition of derelict houses in our community. So I'll speak to one on the West End. It's no conflict of interest because I see there are animals going inside. I saw I assume it was a fox. I didn't want to get close enough, or whatever heck it was. There was also a skunk in that facility as well in the basement. I like to know when their election will proceed. Since we have staff now, we have equipment, especially the one West End has been in that situation now for the last 4 years, and it's falling apart, and there are animals gathering inside. And I think that's going to be danger to our community in the West End because other people have their pets, dogs and cats, and I don't want to see more animals disappear because this is collecting animals, this derelict house. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stefanik, but I am going to submit a point of order that we should discuss this item under the staff reports. The project manager did talk, or sorry, the public works manager did talk about the derelict buildings, I believe in the September meeting on the 22nd as well. And I'm just following up on this report. But I do believe it was in the September 22nd meeting. So those discussion items can be discussed at our next regular council meeting when the the public works manager does his report.
I honestly am not sure if I was at that meeting. I don't recall that, but if I was, I would have made a comment. But I think it's crucial. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to remind council that during 3.6 is council committee updates, and it's not an opportunity for council to direct staff. So moving on, thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Councillor Kistemaker, go ahead.
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. The only updates I have is that the Hornpain Housing Corporation has met several times, and it looks like the transition will is going through on Friday for the Parkview Apartments. And it's been really interesting working with the new board, the new created board. So that's a great area of improvement for our community, and I'm hoping to see great success through there. I did attend a few different meetings over the course of the last couple of weeks. I did go to the mayor's meeting group virtually with Gail, and we have discussed at that meeting about possibly having a secondary meeting take place between the communities for our ambulance services. So just an update on that. We had talked about possibly holding that meeting through the mayor's group, but because some of the communities are not on the mayor's group, we decided to have a meeting off to the side, and the mayor of Wawa is going to coordinate that. And Belinda, I did ask that you would be extended an invitation as you are the rep at ADSAP, and he's looking at making that meeting with a representative of ADSAP. I believe his name is Jeff, the first name, but all those details will come. At the mayor's meeting, it was also updated that the mayor of Wawa will be stepping aside. He is moving into Sault Ste. Marie, and Councillor Pat Tate will be taking on the role until council decides who the new mayor will be. So I will be sending a card on behalf of Hornpain, and it's been a pleasure working with the mayor of Wawa, Ron, and I look forward to and hope that he has great endeavors into the future. Only other thing there moving forward is just trying to manage all the different meetings coming up and the tourism summit. So that's all I have to report on right now. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the bylaws. I'm thinking we will go through the bylaws, and then when we go into closed session, we'll take a short break before our closed session when we transition, if council's okay with that. I know we've been at this for 2 hours already. I'm seeing agreement. Okay. Okay, let's continue on then for 15 and 15.1, amendment to the bylaw 1851. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. John and Drago. Moved by John Peroff, second by Drago Stefanik. Be it resolved that bylaw 1878, being a bylaw to amend the water and sewage rates for the municipality for the year of 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Any further discussion on this bylaw, this amendment? Okay, seeing none, council, I put the bylaw to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Item 15.2, temporary boring, Infrastructure Ontario. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. John Peroff and Belinda Kistemaker. Moved by John Peroff, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1879, being a bylaw to authorize the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, OILC, for financing of certain ongoing capital works of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain to authorize temporary borrowing from OILC to meet expenditures in connection with such capital works, and to authorize long-term borrowing for such capital works through the issue of debentures to OILC be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Any discussion on the motion or on the bylaw? Not seeing any. The only question I had, Gail, I'll address, is why did we make the bylaw, like the resolution not stating any of the capital works? Is it just to keep it open-ended? Because the bylaw shows what we're spending the loans on for, or the loans for?
If I'm not mistaken, that wording is provided by OILC. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yes, that's correct. And I sent them over a draft and they've reviewed it and told me that it was the wording was good to bring before council.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I just, when I was thinking about it, looking at our minutes after, all we'll see is this, and it doesn't really have any information of what it was, but the bylaw number's there and it's detailed out in the bylaw. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions or comments on the bylaw? Okay, there being none, I put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And we're at 15.3, the transfer payment agreement. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago Stefanik and John Peroff. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1880, being a bylaw to enter into a transfer payment agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain and Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Any questions on the bylaw? Okay, there being none, I put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, and the last bylaw is 1881. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda Kistemaker and John Peroff. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1881, being a bylaw to appoint Jennifer Hill as deputy clerk, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Any discussion on the bylaw? There being none, I put that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we're coming to the end of our open session. If I can get a mover and a seconder for the next portion, Drago, thank you. And John. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting at 8:03 p.m. be closed to the public in order to discuss advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, pursuant of Section 239 2F of the Municipal Act 2001. Those in favor? Okay, and that's carried. So council, if we could meet at our closed link at 8:15. get a mover and a seconder to open? Okay, mover to table. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by Drago Stefanik. Be it resolved that the council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby return to open council at 8:43 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, just a summary of the closed session for our residents. There's nothing further resolved at this time from our closed session, and it will be an ongoing matter. So continuing on to 20, our adjournment. So the first is the confirmatory bylaw. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda Kistemaker, John Peroff. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1882, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their regular meeting held on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And we have our final motion is the adjournment. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago Stefanik, Belinda Kistemaker. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that council does hereby adjourn this regular meeting of council held on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 8:45 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Well, thank you, council. I wish everyone a good week and take care, everyone.